In the last while, I've really wanted to engage the viewers by getting into what I find unique in Holocaust studies, the survivors themselves as people and what they have to say, so I wanted to show a little clip of testimony. I hope that the viewers find this instructive and engaging. I have chosen a Polish survivor from the city of Łódź, discussing his life there during the 1930s before the war began. Łódź had a pre-war population of around 670,000 people, of which 230,000 were Jewish, about a third. Incidentally, the survivor we'll be watching today is named Abe. He talks about open discrimination, segregation, and even what it was like to live through a pogrom, and what it finally took to stop the pogrom, since the authorities in Poland then turned a blind eye to such things. I hope others find this clip enlightening in terms of it setting the stage for what was to come later on. Abe really gets into the minutiae of day-to-day life long before the Nazis eventually occupy his city on September 8, 1939. Ideally, this clip will give you an idea of what it was like to actually be living as a Yiddish-speaking Jew in Poland before the war.
That brings us back to that question that you asked, that I asked you before about the relationship between Jews and non-Jews.
The building I lived in was 34 or 33 tenants. The only non-Jew in that particular building was the janitor. Jews were not allowed, I mean it wasn't official, but the Jews were not allowed a janitor's job or a job in a government enterprise or the heavy industry or like the hydro or gas company or the tramways we had in Łódź. I remember in Warsaw they had a big fight and a strike, and finally they won, and they allowed 2 Jews to join in as workers in the tramways.
This was in Warsaw?
In Warsaw.
Right.
In Łódź, this was not the case. There was never a Jew accepted in any of these places.
In any
the
of
only
these public
time they start taking Jews into government or municipal jobs, like public works, was when the socialists won the elections, the municipal elections in Łódź, and this was the first time that Jews could get in on municipal jobs.
You remember that?
I do remember.
Do you remember when that was approximately?
That was, if I'm not mistaken, in 1934.
Right.
If I have to talk in specific personal terms, I never had any real contact with non-Jews except what I said before. Mm-hmm. Only from time to time we met occasionally on the street or on other occasions when we were beaten up by non-Jews.
Well, that's what I was...
Like going to or from school.
Were you sometimes?
Yes.
In fights?
We had also pogroms. I remember one in the late 30s, a pogrom on Jews that started in a different section of the city, but when it came into our area, that was the end of the pogrom, because our district had a lot of Jewish butchers, people that worked in slaughterhouses and things like that. That was in our area. We lived just across the street from the what we called the bazaar. The bazaar was about 50 stores, butcher shops around. When they came into our street, to the Tomirska, naturally the pogrom ended then, because the Jews resisted and there was a fight, and I'm being very proud of the fact that the pogrom ended. They were given a lesson that it's better for them to stop, and they couldn't continue any further.
Now, what do you remember of that yourself?
In the building I lived in, there was a few people hidden behind the gates of the building. And when they arrived, and they didn't expect that any of these Jews will come out. The streets were empty, but they jumped out of the houses with sticks, with all kinds of weapons, if you call it so, carrying in their hands. And there was a big fight then, and there was Poles laying on the sidewalks.
Bleeding?
Bleeding. And this is when finally the police came in, because...
Do you remember that? Or
yes.
How many Poles came? How many?
Hundreds.
Hundreds?
Yeah.
Were these people from Łódź or from the outlying
From
areas?
Łódź, no, from Łódź.
This was what year, approximately?
Yeah. That must have been in 37, 38.
Right.
Also, there was times when the Jews were not allowed into the parks of Łódź. Łódź didn't have too many parks, but the few we had, from time to time, they beat up the Jews that came into the parks. Sometimes they were too few of them, so they ran away. And other times that we knew that they are preparing something against the Jews in the parks, naturally we sent over boys and just waiting for them. And there was fights from time to time in the parks.
Were these young people mostly?
Young people.
Would they be calling you Jew or go away, or what would they
A
be
Jew,
saying to
usually
you?
the name of a Jew in Łódź on the street was Jew.
In Polish?
Yeah, they call him Żydzie, Jew. They didn't think of any other name. They didn't know your name, they wouldn't ask you because Jew was enough.
Do you remember walking through a park or walking through a street and them yelling at you?
From and to school, I remember very well.
What
I
would,
was
what would they say? What would they yell?
just the dirty Jew.
In Polish?
In Polish, yeah.
What's how?
Żydzie. Yeah.
And dirty Jew
Yeah.
is what?
They called us names, I would repeat it right now.
Well, we don't know Polish, so it's all right.
Even we don't know Polish, I do know.
Right.
Parszywe Żydzie. That means it's kind of dirty, but it's rougher than the word dirty in English. I remember once, before the elections, I can't remember exactly what year, but 2-3 years before the war, and we were gluing placards on the walls for the elections. As a Bundist, naturally, I went with the leaflets or placards of the Bund. I was with another boy, and we were attacked by a group of Endekis, what we call at the time. We called them because it was a party called Narodowa Demokracja, the National Democrats. And this is why we call them Endekis, ND.
National Democrat.
So they attacked us, we ran away. We ran into Lutomierska, and Lutomierska, they knew already that Lutomierska is not the best place to attack Jews. They had 2 times bad experiences before. And this is how we were saved. So many times it happened, but we got so used to it that it was like a way of life.
Thank you so much for watching a little of Abe's story. Please consider subscribing.